What's up, gays? There's been some controversy bubbling over the past couple weeks. Well, actually, the past couple of years, but I digress. Surrounding Quinton Reviews and one of his former editors. Quinton is a video essay style YouTuber, not someone I'm super familiar with, but in doing research for this topic, I did notice that there was a few videos on his channel that I have actually seen in the past, and I vaguely remember liking them. Regardless, a couple weeks ago, another YouTuber named Flowergothic put out a video on her channel detailing her time as working for a video editor for Quinton. Specifically, she had worked on the I Binge iCarly and the End of iCarly videos, which I can assume are probably video essays detailing and breaking down the first couple of seasons of iCarly, but I can't say for sure because the average length of each of these videos is about 4 hours. I refuse to research and watch 8 hours of content about a TV show for teenage girls made in the early 2000s. The TLDR is that Flowergothic has lobbed some allegations at Quinton Reviews for being underpaid, overworked, and emotionally manipulated, with Quinton putting out his own video refuting her claims. So let's find out what really happened, and before you do, make sure you subscribe, because if you don't, this channel will turn into alt-right content. The Accusation. Flowergothic edited the two videos I mentioned before in 2021. Around that period, she had worked for Quinton Reviews for about a year and a half. Right off the bat, the first few seconds of her video they don't start off on a great foot for me. She begins by saying,
"All right, fine. I'll make an actual video talking about my experiences with Quinton Reviews."
Two red flags on the play immediately. One, the overacting doesn't make me feel like you're taking these allegations seriously. It just kind of doesn't fit the tone of what you're trying to do in the video. And two, I think pouring a glass of wine and drinking wine throughout the video also reinforces point number one. She makes her claim of a poor working environment, which is especially offensive to her because he considered her a friend.
I eventually realized that he never treated me as a friend, even though he called me one.
But their friendship shouldn't really have anything to do with their business relationship, so the fact that she would even bring that up just kind of makes me suspicious. She also makes the claim that she did the majority of the work on the first iCarly video and was the sole editor on the second. She then goes on this extremely long diatribe on the lore of how they became friends that led to them working together. What is that, red flag number 3? For an editor, she seems to lack the ability to edit down her own story. I'm not kidding, the first 7.5 minutes of this 18-minute video could have been completely cut out. Here, let me re-edit that 7-minute part of the video for you right here, right now. We were friends, and then he asked me if I wanted to work for him. Quinton had tweeted out that he needs to hire some editors, asking people to send in applications. He gave out like a video file and was like, here, try and edit this in my style of editing. Flowergothic obviously applies and ends up getting the job. She goes on to complain about the fact that she had to work on her birthday to hand in this demo application.
"I spent 8 hours of my May 16, 2021 editing Quinton's thoughts on the pilot, which in America is a very significant birthday, because that's when you can finally dream."
This comes off as entitled. Yes, if you want to be successful and grasp opportunities other people are too lazy to go for or just not qualified enough to go for, you're gonna have to make some sacrifices in your life. This is like being an adult 101. Red flag number 5.
"Was there a contract? No. Why didn't I ask for one? This was my very first real editing gig. I was fresh to the scene, as they say."
Which I think is probably an oversight on both parts. This is, her first time having like a real editing job. So, she just kind of wasn't aware about how to go through with these type of things. That's a fair enough point, but you can't claim naivete on your part when this was the first time that Quinton had ever hired an editor, so it would also apply to him. She then complains about having to work 7 hours a day for Quinton while having to go to school and working on her own channel.
"I was working about 7 hours a day on that iCarly video, along with school and my own content."
Which honestly just comes off as like whiny and narcissistic. Nobody put a gun to your head. You don't need to take this job. Obviously there has to be like a balance to everything, but I mean, if you want to be successful like at literally anything in your life ever, you're gonna have to be prepared to sacrifice things like going out with your friends and hanging out with your family, working on personal projects. I don't think I put on deodorant today, goddamn. After working on the 2 videos, she also worked as a writer for Quinton on like a 3rd iCarly video. I don't know the iCarly lore, I think it's an iCarly. Whatever. She basically watched the show along with him and would give him notes and jokes to use for the script. She then jumps back in time to talk about her time working on the 2nd iCarly video, complaining that during this period she had a tighter schedule because she was going back to school. Which, again, I'm not sure why you would bother to mention that. Like, time management is on you. If you couldn't afford to, you know, take this job on because you have too many other things going on, then don't take the job. But instead of fixing her time management issues, she decides to send a schizophrenic wall of text, which can be boiled down to, I'm busy and have anxiety. Honestly, I think this editor should probably hire me as an editor just for her like thoughts in general. I feel like I can make her points just a lot more pungent and poignant. Quinton responds by basically saying, damn, okay, well, let me know if you want less work and I'll hire more people. She then continues to complain about having to work hard.
I worked 6 or 7 hours a day on that video over the span of a little over a month, to the point where I had to skip class from time to time to get the video done.
She then shows us what she was actually getting paid for the 2 videos. For the first video, she got paid $2,000, and for the second, it was $1,700. Well, initially it was $1,300, but then she did ask for more money for $1,700, which he gave her. Which, in her defense, kind of, it does seem low. If her claims of working 6 to 7 days a week, about 7 hours a day, 4 weeks a pop for each video, that is fairly low. It's at this point their friendship falls apart. Her final message to him was another giant wall of meandering text. I'm not gonna read it all, but to sum up the 3 points she made, point 1 was basically she blamed him for the mismanagement of her own time. Point 2 is her criticizing his work ethic, even though up until this point she's complained about having to work hard multiple times. And point 3 was about a time she was editing an iCarly episode. She had felt triggered by some of the subject matter, and he wasn't there to console her properly, and that's why he's a bad friend. If you're triggered by a gay TV show for preteens, you should probably seek serious psychiatric help. She then refuses to divulge the final reason why their friendship actually ended, as it was too personal, which again, as an editor, I think you should have realized that this was a very anticlimactic ending to your story. And finally, she mentions that she just full on told her friend to harass Quinton Reviews in DMs, which ended up getting them both blocked.
A friend of mine then chewed him out in DMs with my permission, and I got booted from his server.
The response.
In October of 2021, one of my editors sent me a personal message on Discord telling me that they were in love with me and they wanted to be my girlfriend.
Well done. Quinton Review 1, Flowergothic 0. The DLC. Honestly, this explains all the red flags I noticed in her video. She's a horned up young adult who confused being in lust and having admiration for being in love with someone, and when that love wasn't reciprocated, she then proceeded to lash out and try to discredit Quinton. Because if she couldn't have him, then nobody can have him. The classic scorned woman archetype. But for prosperity, let's continue on. He legitimately did like working with her and did consider her a friend, but in hindsight, knowing what he knows now, he should have cut her loose a lot earlier. This is a point I completely agree with. She also cropped out a lot of her screenshots to paint him as the villain. The gist of the situation from his perspective is that at the time he was going through a transition period, going from shorter 20 to 30 minute videos to now working on like 4 to 5 hour videos. He never hired any editors before, so Flowergothic was the first one he hired to the team. At the time, he only had hired her, but the plan was, which he would eventually fall through with is building a team of editors so everything didn't fall on her shoulders. When he initially gave her the footage to start editing the first iCarly video, he gave her like basically like a 2-week span, like, hey, get back to me with the edited footage in 2 weeks. That would give him time to start writing and shooting the next part of the video. But she returned in 2 days, which initially was like, oh great, that's super quick, that's awesome. But then when he looked at the actual footage, there were so many mistakes that he then had to spend 2 days re-editing everything she did.
She sent me the project file and I went through, and it took me, I think, the same amount of time to fix everything. Do you understand? So if it took her 2 days to edit this originally, it took me 2 days to fix it.
This would be the workflow that would continue between the two of them. She would start to grow impatient, waiting to get more footage to edit from him, but a lot of his time is now being dedicated to editing the job he hired her for. During the production of the second iCarly video, when she came to him saying like, hey, I don't have as much time, he flat out said, which I believe she even screenshotted in her video, okay, cool, then yeah, I'll just pass it off to other editors, just let me know. But in hindsight, with the information we know now, it's pretty clear what was happening is that she didn't want that work to go to other editors because she was in love with them and was trying to leverage their professional relationship to build a personal one.
You know, I had to say this stuff to her because she was so enthusiastic about doing the material, about being editor number one, about always being the person who was sent the material.
So it ended up kind of becoming like this territorial thing. Her claims that she did most of the work on the first iCarly video and all of the editing on the second one were both false.
I'm quickly inserting something here which is important for context that I forgot to mention, which is that this editor has consistently claimed that they were the only editor on these videos. So this is a lie.
Quinton himself edited a majority of the first video, and he had hired a team by the second one. That team seemed to be gelling better with his workflow, with a lot less mistakes, etc. So the plan was to fire her basically after the end of the second video.
I would give them material. They'd spend 2 to 3 weeks working on the material. Then they'd send me back the material, and I wouldn't have to change
So with their professional relationship severed, she then leveraged their personal relationship to get back into the fold by asking him if she could, do notes and send him notes on the third video.
And she wanted to give me jokes and notes and rants I could go on. She was basically trying to be my ghostwriter. But a lot of the other material she would send me would be like really odd and hyper-specific and sometimes inappropriate, sometimes really sexual analysis of the season 1 victorious.
So her claim is false that he hired her as a ghostwriter. And it's at this point that she drunk texts him, kind of revealing her love for him. He replies, trying to let her off easy, but in hindsight, once again, he should have been a lot more blunt and straightforward. She would again profess her love for him in those drunkenly written, useless notes for the third video. She sends a third drunk text just flat out asking him if they could date. Also, I think at this point it confirms that she's an alcoholic.
Because that's when you can finally...
He then sent her like a long list of reasons as to why he didn't want to date her. I think all 4 reasons pretty much can be summed up with, I don't mix personal with business. She was still on the payroll at the time. And that's when she sent her final message to him, which was like the rebuttal list that we saw before. And it's at this point she's just in full-on revenge mode. About the pay, he mentions that as well.
And she had a bunch of other stuff. She was like, I wanted to be paid more. You didn't pay me enough. You didn't pay me enough, and you were abusing my feelings to get me to accept less of a paycheck. And I paid her what the number she suggested.
He claims that this defect in his operation has since been remedied with future editors, which he seemed pretty reasonable about everything, so I'll take him at his word for that. This whole experience was quite the roller coaster for me. I didn't really know what this was going to be going into it. I saw other people kind of talking about it, so I was like, oh, let me poke around and see what's going on here. I didn't think her video was going to be that bad. What was this lady thinking? In what universe could you very clearly drunkenly write a script and then drunkenly record a video and then edit that video, show it to people, and then still upload it thinking this makes you look like a sane person? Not to mention the entire time she's like overacting and the whole thing just comes off like a performance. It was very cringe, very cringe. That's all I gotta say. Bye.